This episode of Inside Golf Podcast is brought to you by Inside Sports Network.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Boston Capital Twitter, Steve, on the Hold the Green podcast.
All right, we are live. Tap in, birdie.
All right, Carson Young is here.
I bet Ludwig at 28.
Let's go.
I bet him at,
I bet him at 25.
Low sevens. I think there's some guys in here we like.
Harris English at 7,300.
Why the fuck would I not bet Rory?
All right, we are back. Rishi, my co-host on the infamous Wednesday evening Ball Knowers After Dark show. We're sharing you with the public this week, which I have some mixed feelings about. They'll still have to join the ISN community to get your tennis bets, but thank you for filling in on late notice and joining me on this fine Monday evening for you coming in from London.
Yeah, Monday evening, but fired up for this week. Obviously in tennis, we love our Indian Wells, but API is also one of my favorite weeks. It's historically been my best week in DFS golf, so can't wait to attack it.
So the listeners will have to excuse me. We were minus 500 to do like 3 to 4 minutes on tennis. Indian Wells is this week, huh?
Indian Wells, inclusive of your cousin, plays in like 2 hours against Lloyd Harris, I think. Massive serve. But your cousin's the favorite. I think he's like a minus 135. I expect him to win.
Did we bet Elliott? My uncle, by the way, it's just so funny. Like my uncle sees me nonstop tweeting about how good your tennis bets have been. And my uncle just comes in there at the 11th hour and is like, pay attention to your cousin, man. He's doing some great things on the Challenge Tour.
I draw my line at betting on the qualifiers, but I would. But no, absolutely fired up for Indian Wells. It's like our Players Championship equivalent on the tennis side. Massive event for up and coming tennis players and the established ones like Carlos Alcaraz, I think has won 2 years in a row. So wow. I think we kick off like Wednesday. So we'll get in the futures market and release those tomorrow behind the paywall, and we'll get after it.
And if Elliott wins his match today, does that mean he's in the main draw?
I think he might have 2 matches. It's a little bit of a bracket because a lot of people want to qualify for this tournament. There's a lot of points, like it's 1,000 tournaments, so 1,000 points and a lot of dollars attached to it. And it's just like the Mecca in California. So nice. Such a nice facility. Obviously the weather's unbelievable.
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously we have a huge week coming up next week in the golf streets with the Players Championship. So my only main concern with going to Indian Wells this weekend is I'm going to be dialed on players research all weekend. And I have a buddy in town that I'm playing Rustic Canyon with. But if Elliott goes far, I may have to I think I probably have. I mean, he'll get me tickets and stuff. It's Indian Wells, Palm Springs. I haven't been over to Palm Springs in a while. Last time I was there was to check out some golf courses around there, but it's, I think, 2 hours from LA. So definitely a possibility for me. And as always, if you are checking out this show by any chance for the first time, I do my best to promote Rishi's tennis stuff on Twitter the best that I can. And I still don't even scratch the surface in terms of like what he provides for us and the run that he's been on. What are you up like 90 something units this year and all recorded, by the way, tennis plays?
Yeah, we the Emma Navarro outright at like 4.5 to 1 took us over to like 102 units. And a lot of year yet. And a lot of that came from our first outright in Australian Open, but in that
Madison
gap
Keys.
of time, we also added like 15 units in non-major events since then. And we have 3 more majors left. So there's a lot of opportunity here.
Yeah. So anyway, join our Discord. You'll get more tennis stuff from Rishi, the best doing it right now. Let's dive into the golf. Before we do anything API, did you catch any Cognizant last week and any overwhelming broad takeaways maybe from like your process? How did your week pan out? Good week, bad week, any mistakes you made, regrets you have, or positives that you want to shout out?
Yeah, no, I mean, I ended up, watching live locally for Saturday, Sunday, and honestly, overwhelming thought is that course played so easy throughout the weekend. At least it toughened up a little bit in the bear trap Saturday, Sunday, but overall, oh man, such a joke relative to what it once was. My most live outright on Sunday was Jordan Spieth. I just saw like
Yeah.
something trending in the right direction for the last couple of tournaments, Phoenix Open. I mean, there was enough there where I felt like at 40-1 there was some good potential. I wish I took some more bets on long shots. I know we had Joey hit like 120-1 on Highsmith. I was not even close to that. So I wish I fired a couple more long shot darts, acknowledging that, the course was going to play so easy that a Jake Knapp could shoot a 59, but I did not take that approach, which I probably should have, but lesson learned.
I'm bummed that we didn't have you on the Wednesday night show last week. You were traveling, but you would have represented the strong Spieth contingent, and that was a Rishi and Kobe play if I've ever seen one. I think he ended up around 5, 6, 7% in the main contest. He was not on my radar whatsoever, and I think encouraging signs going forward, heading into Players Week.
I wish he was playing this week.
Yeah, no, seriously. I know they gave Rafa Campos the sponsors invite ahead of him. I had I got a lot right, and I still walked away like feeling super defeated from that week. I had 25% Highsmith, and all four of
That's
my
good.
core plays finished top 25, and I barely min cashed. I mean, the Burger run out was really bad for me. The Henley finishing like T6 instead of T2 was really bad for me. Highsmith winning was quite good, but I in Putnam in there, Dahman in there, Brian Harmon in there, it just felt like I didn't have all the right combination. I feel like Doug Gim deserved a lot more than a T11 based on the way, but I thought he was going to win for a second there on Sunday. But all things considered, pretty hyped about how things went for us over at ISN for the Cognizant as usual. And let's talk API, man. Any thoughts about this golf course? You're not in the Orlando area. Have you ever been up around Bay Hill? Are you familiar at all with how far is it from where you live in Palm Beach Gardens?
So it's about 2.5 hours from Palm Beach Gardens. I went to undergrad in Orlando, so familiar with the area. Have a couple buddies that are members at UCF.
Okay,
a couple friends that went to
Rollins
is like Winter Park.
Okay, that's right. Got them mixed up.
Yeah. So very nearby. I have a couple friends that are members at Bay Hill, so they know the course quite well. But yeah, no, I mean, I think your Sunday pod covered it very well. I think it's a great test. I think that when I look at things that I focused on like the last couple of years, obviously the driving piece, being able to play out of the rough, that's a huge component. But total driving, I mean, it just comes back to that, de-emphasizing the putting part. The winners, as we look historically, doesn't necessarily been, amazing putters. So, and it's been relatively the same, the same calculation year after year. It hasn't changed too much. A little bit, it's gotten a little bit tougher, a little bit easier, but the high level outcome tends to be the same.
Couldn't agree more. Obviously, I talked extensively about the total driving piece in the Sunday pod. That's kind of the theme for the week for me in terms of like, I think that, it's really, in my opinion, in the top 3 toughest tee to green tests on tour. And I don't think that we are at risk for a not my Honda situation this week. Long time IGP listeners will know. I mean, this is a super deep cut, but I've been talking about the groundskeeper at Bay Hill for like 5 years, and how after in 2018, Rory won this tournament at 18 under par, and they brought in this guy named Chris Flynn. And Chris Flynn was like, the 18 under par thing, what this golf course should be. And ever since
Yep.
Chris Flynn, we've been single digits under par to varying degrees. The 2020 year, if you remember that year that Hatton won at 4 under par, and then the 2022 year where Scotty Scheffler won at 5 under par, we're not going to get that. I mean, that was close to the edge as far as a golf course on the PGA Tour will go. That was borderline like impossible. I still remember that Hatton round from 2020 where the scoring average was 3.5 strokes over par. Last 2 years, it's been a little bit easier. You'd Kitayama at 9 under par, Scotty Scheffler shooting 15 under par. Second place was 10 under par. Like Scotty just put on an insane performance. I think the scoring average comp that you want to look at is actually 2021, the Bryson year, where I think he won at 9, 10, 11 under par. It played a little over a stroke over par. And we have a bunch of guys in the Discord that will be on the grounds tomorrow, giving us some updates. Our MVP of Discord, Ghost Jammed, lives in the Orlando area. He'll share a bunch of stuff for us. But I'm not super worried about this golf course playing demonstrably easier than years past. Like, there's going to be a lot of wind on Thursday, a lot of wind on Sunday, and I don't think it's going to be like near impossible 2020 Bay Hill or 2022 Bay Hill. But if you're asking me on Monday afternoon, winning score, I'm probably looking at 9 under par. Maybe somebody gets to 10 under par with a scoring average above 1.1. Anything else big picture that you want to add on the golf course before we dive into the slate and the players?
No, I would say it's about, same projection. Should play pretty firm. I don't think it's been too wet in Central Florida for the last couple months.
Yeah. Okay, so this slate's really interesting to me. I talked about on the Sunday podcast that Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy, in theory, on this golf course, this is one of the few golf courses on the PGA Tour where before that Rory and Scotty even hit their first tee shot on one, they have such a tremendous advantage on this golf course due to their skill set of, elite driving and long iron play, right? And you look at Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy's results on, like, I put together all of the golf courses that feature thick rough and firm greens and are long, your Muirfield Villages, your Quail Hollows to a certain extent, your Olympia Fields, your Oak Hills, your Winged Foots. Like, It is Scotty, Rory everywhere with some Xander and Hovland mixed in too. But Scotty at 12K, Rory at 10.8. How do you assess the top of the board, man? Are those prices what they should be? Are those prices where you thought that they would come in?
They're not what they should be. They are what I thought they would come in on. I think Kyle mentioned, the signature event pricing has been so soft throughout the year, and it's kind of unfortunate. I think Scotty could probably be 13 and Rory could be like 12.5, and let's let people make a choice. But we're again in the scenario where both can be played. I think there's going to be a lot of lineups where both are played, despite how ugly it gets, because it's this like quasi non-cut, whereas like only 5 people are going to get cut. People don't mind going to the bottom of the board. There's a lot of names at the bottom of the board that people kind of like clicking. Eric Cole, Austin Eckroat, Dunlap. Like, I think those are names that people don't mind pairing with like a Scotty Rory scenario. So yeah, I think you're going to get a lot of these like stars and scrubs lineups as a result of the pricing, being so soft.
Okay. So here's my problem with a Scotty Rory jam. And I like if you play, we've been talking about this in the Discord all morning, but if you play Scotty and Rory in the same lineup, that leaves you with 4 slots and an average salary of $6,800. Now, for me personally, we have to remember here that this is one of the signature events that does have a cut. Okay.
Yep.
So there's 72 players in the field, and the top 50 in ties make the weekend. So generally, if this plays out like signature events in the past where we have had a cut, generally about 55 players are going to make the cut. Okay. 55 to 58 players are going to make the cut. If we look back at Torrey Pines, where we had a cut and a similar field, and a kind of a somewhat similar golf course as well in many ways. Like 10 of the 15 guys that missed the cut at Torrey Pines were in the 6K range. So I would throw a bit of a challenge flag that like we want to be relying too heavily on the 6K range this week, because, you know, if you have a lineup with 3 or 4 guys in the 6K range, doesn't matter if you have Scotty Scheffler winning the tournament, you know, even by 3 to 4 strokes, you're going to have a 4 of 6. The odds are that you're going to have a 4 of 6. And I think what I am trying to do this week, and I talked about this a little bit on the Sunday show, but I'm trying to find a way where I can, Sal put it right here in the comment, I think it's a great strategy. My goal this week is to get as much Scotty and Rory in as possible with as little 6K range in as possible. So what I think that's going to cause me to do is a lot of fading of the 9s, the 8s, and the high 7s. Like, I think what I'm going to do a lot is have lineups that start with Scotty, and maybe my second man in a Scotty lineup is like Keegan at 8.4. And then for my other 4 slots, that leaves me 7,400. And I can take my chance on one 6K guy, but then live in the 7s.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's a really healthy strategy. I'm probably going to take an approach similar to that, although this early on, and I know we're not at the Wednesday show, but my sense is almost playing 50% of having neither of them in it and building balanced with no Scotty, no Rory. Who won? Wyndham Clark won last year. So I'm not saying he's going to win this year.
Scotty won last year, but Wyndham Clark finished runner-up.
Okay, Wyndham won. Okay, he came runner-up. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's in the realm of outcomes that, you know, a Fleetwood can win this tournament, and you can build a balanced with like the low 9s, high 8s, and avoid both of them and take an even more balanced approach. Alternatively. And I don't think that's a route that many people are going to take. I'd say if we're going to guess that Scotty's like, even at 12K, like 35, 40% maybe.
Yeah, I was going to guess. What's your projection for Rory and Scotty this week?
Scotty maybe about, like, I would say probably going to touch towards 40%, just given history, even at that price. Rory, at least 30, if not coming up on 35. And so if you avoid both of them and somebody else wins this tournament, you are almost like guaranteeing money if you get like 5 out of 6.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I agree with you. I would maybe put them a little bit lower just because the pricing is strong enough where I don't think too many people are going to play them in the same lineup. I think some will, and some in the Discord have already been talking about it. But if I had to guess, this feels like a Scotty 38% week to me and Rory 33% week to me. And then once you get past those guys, I think my guess would be Ludwig is the 3rd highest stone on the slate. I mean, how do you assess the range after Rory and Scotty, and who would be your favorite from like 9K to Fleetwood?
Yeah, no, it's so I agree with you that either Ludwig, maybe Cantlay picking up some steam, maybe that's your fault, but I mean, I think he's going to be pretty popular that way. I'll tell
Yeah.
you,
Sunday pod tax on Cantlay for sure.
I mean, I've seen a lot of outright, and the outright number's very fair on him, to be honest. For somebody that's having the season he's having, it's kind of crazy. Like, he's in a similar range with some of the, like a Sung JM, and I mean, Cantley's having like an unbelievable season, if you just take away like the wins. So when you ask about the favorites, it's really hard to click on somebody that hasn't played all season, but nobody's going to play Xander, which makes it so fun to consider. I don't know if I can get there just based on, 10,000. You haven't seen him play really, but that could be a really fun click if you want to be a contrarian. I also really like, based on course history, and particularly I overemphasized last year when we hit the nuts.
Shout out Brendan Todd against all odds.
Brendan Todd, thanks to you giving stats on hitting off the rough. I think Glover was also in that stat, which was in that winning lineup as well. Another player in the 9Ks who's really good off the rough and has pretty good history here is Hideki. I like Hideki a lot. And the rule with Hideki is when nobody's really talking about him, that's when he pops. And so I'm kind of into Hideki this week towards the bottom of the board. And I think Fleetwood, I think a lot of people are going to like Fleetwood. I think he's going to be manageable, but I think this is a kind of a good course fit. One of the courses that I look at for correlation, or just as far as like leaderboard goes, that LACC US Open, Wyndham, that's what I was meaning, where Wyndham won, and then like Rory Scotty. That's the kind of leaderboard I really expect. And Fleetwood was right there, like top 5. So I think it's those sort of players that are going to do well. So Hideki, Fleetwood, and maybe Xander are the other plays when you take a look below Scotty and Rory.
Yeah, I think that Ludwig, for me, I'm just not going to be able to get to Ludwig this week in DraftKings, considering the fact that I'm leaning towards a 50% Scotty, 50% Rory build. And I'm really trying my best to build as balanced as possible with a lot of Rory lineups and with a lot of Scotty lineups. I mean, I'm not going to, as we sit here on Monday, a lot can change, but I'm not going to have one lineup that doesn't have a Rory or Scotty. And so I think I'm going to pick one player in the 9K range as my second man in, more main so in my Rory lineups than my Scotty lineups. And I think I got to say, man, I've narrowed it down to Cantlay, Hideki, Fleetwood. I think Finau is overpriced. I understand the JT love. I mean, JT is hitting, he's like, JT
feels like a T20.
Yeah,
sure.
JT has returned to being one of the 3 best iron players in the world. What I'm selfishly hoping for is kind of a poor performance this week and then maybe hopping back on at the Players, because the Players to me is a golf course that is going to accentuate what JT is doing great right now, far more than Bay Hill. Like the Players is a golf course where you can hit less than driver off the tee, and it really accentuates middle iron play. And right now, JT has gained 13 strokes on approach in his last 2 starts. That's great at Bay Hill. You need to be a great iron player at Bay Hill for sure. But it's also a golf course that you can gain a significant advantage by being a great driver of the ball. And we know that JT has the distance, but he's still not an accurate driver of the ball at all. Like, there are a ton of range of outcomes this week where JT could drive himself out of this tournament by his inability to hit fairways. And I just trust Fleetwood's driving accuracy and Cantlay's driving accuracy a little bit more right now. So it seems like we're somewhat aligned here. I'm Rory, Scotty at the top, 50% each, most likely. The only other guy I'm going to play in the 9K range is either Cantlay or Fleetwood. Talk to me about the 8s.
And right before getting to that, I just have always thought Colin kind of should be like a good fit here. I don't know why the history doesn't. I think
you'll get some leverage there on Colin.
I agree, and it makes him very attractive because I could see it. I mean, there's no doubt. And again, we kind of look at this LACC T14. Maybe that is where he ends up around, but it's like he's, irons are always crisp. can drive pretty accurately. If he looks good, off the rough, can put that together, he could have a really, really high ceiling. So I think it's a little interesting. As to the eights, Sung Jae always brings good history here. I do see a scenario where he gets a little bit popular relative to the eights. I just don't think there's a lot in like the high eights. I mean, maybe Henley, just given, he's been on a heater. I like Zalatoris a lot this week.
Me too.
Has good history here. These sort of scoring conditions, I like. It's like this gritty sort of golf. This is the big boy stuff, and that's where Zalatoris ends up standing up. Shane, 8,200. I think he's getting very popular. I've seen him on a lot of outright cards at like 65 to 1. So if that translates to DFS, I think he'll be popular, but I think it's a very fair price for somebody that has really strong T10 upside. So I like Shane a lot. I'll have to take a think about Wyndham Clark. I'm a huge Wyndham Clark guy, but
I know.
I don't know if he has enough to put it together this week, and he has a pretty low floor.
Yeah, this is a range that I think is going to have to be a bit of a casualty for me if I'm really trying to do the Scotty Rory, but then not dip too far into the 6K range. I think I'm going to have to choose two guys in this range and my pool that I would be choosing between. So I'm going to have to cut three of these guys: Sung Jae, Zalatoris, Hovland, Bobby Mack. So I have to cut two of those guys. I want to give a shout out to Bobby Mack. Like, I really like Bobby Mack at 8K this week. His driver is an absolute weapon. Like, Bobby Mack's been driving it. I was talking to Devin in the Discord about this morning. Like, Bobby Mack's driving it straight too. And he's a great long iron player. I've comped this golf course to Marco Simone off the tee, right? Where it's a golf course that tests distance and accuracy fairly equally. I'm not saying he was like the star of the Ryder Cup by any means, but maybe that's another feather in the cap for Hovland as well, who I also really like. And then this theory that I have with Hovland on these thick, rough courses, you look at all of Hovland's best performances over the course of his career. I mean, so many of these golf courses have been so many of his best finishes have been on golf courses with really thick rough, right? So Oak Hill, Olympia Fields, Muirfield Village, even obviously Bay Hill as well. He's contended at too. Even Eastlake, like, is another golf course with really thick greenside rough, Bermuda greenside rough. So I don't know if it is the technique is a little bit easier for Hovland to navigate when you get thick greenside rough. It puts a little bit more randomness in play. There isn't that much of the creativity element that could short circuit a player with poor short game, right? You basically have one shot and one chipping motion, and it's like pop the ball out of the thick rough. And I wonder if there's some sort of correlation there with, why Hovland continues to perform so well at these golf courses with thick greenside rough. Maybe the shots around the greens are a little bit easier for him to navigate than when he's chipping off of heavy short grass. I don't think Hovland's going to win. Like, I don't think that he is sharp enough to beat Scotty Scheffler or Rory McIlroy over the course of 4 days right now. But I would almost guarantee that this is his best finish of the season. I think he's going to finish top 20. I don't know what the ownership's going to be. Who do you think's the highest owned in this range, if you had to guess?
It's a good question. Honestly, I think it's going to be fairly spread out. Maybe Shane, because it's 8,200. And even then, I'm saying it like, I think maybe like 13, 14%. I don't really see somebody in this.
Shane does fit the ISN model this week, to be fair.
Yeah.
Like, he's 8.2K. He's not 8K. We'll let that slide. Yeah. And I don't know what the ownership's going to come in at, but if Shane Lowry is 8.2K and between 7 and 13%, our hands are tied.
Third last year, it's just like he fits.
Yeah. So I think for me, I'm leaning, my favorites are Bobby Mack and Hovland, maybe Zalatoris. I think Zalatoris is a little overpriced, which is a good thing in terms of potentially keeping his ownership down. Yep. I thought Zal was going to be 7.9 this week personally, but should have been. 8.6. Maybe you get some lower ownership. What about the sevens? this is a range, particularly at the bottom of the sevens and even the high sevens, where I'm going to have a lot of guys. I'm going to have a lot of guys in there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like nobody's talking about Corey Connors, who does well here, but just because he hasn't
He is
had,
amazing here.
he just hasn't really had like a great season, hasn't popped. I could feel like this is a spot where, similar to the Hovland thing, this could be his best start of the season. So, and 7,800 for what he's done this season seems a little pricey. Like, I feel like if it's just based on through now, he probably is more like a 7,400 guy, just, relative to someone like a Sahith right now. But yeah, I don't mind Corey Connors this week. Like your Sunday pod said, flop lag week fits. It's time to go back to the long-term talent. Jason Day, don't mind. I absolutely think I love Minwoo Lee this week. Again, it's this LACC thing. Somehow he like outperformed how he played last week. I have no idea how he went up the leaderboard at the Honda, or excuse me, at the COG.
Seriously, he finished T11 and we didn't see one golf shot that he hit all week.
And the thing about these Florida tournaments, it's like when you go streaking on them, you like go streaking through all of them. Like, Wyndham did it at API, then he did it at the Players, which aren't necessarily like course fits. So I could see Minwoo, using the distance and playing quite well. I like him a lot this week. I like Dietrich as well. I think he had like two bad weeks after winning, or two average weeks, nothing great. There's some correlation to the Phoenix Open here, so I don't mind going back to Dietrich at 7,200. Feels pretty cheap, and I don't think he's going to get, overly owned. Maybe.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. Like, I was just building a sample lineup right now, and to give a sense of what I'm thinking and the way that I'm probably building this week is like, I just built a lineup with Bobby Mack as my second man in and Davis Thompson as my final guy at 7.2. Like,
that's
I'm going to have a lot of lineups where Scheffler, Bobby Mack, second man in, and then Pendrith, Matt Fitzpatrick, Davis Thompson, Cameron Young, Adam Scott. Like, those are probably my favorite players in this range. I think this is a good reinvestment opportunity for Pendrith. I thought he was a bad play at Cognizant. I didn't like that golf course for him. Obviously, he was kind of unbearable, unusable chalk at Torrey Pines. I think this is a really good reinvestment opportunity on Pendrith. Flop lag, 7,900 is a fine price for him. I mean, this is just another golf course where his driver is going to have a significant advantage. Like Taylor Pendrith off the tee on this golf course and his ability to hit long irons out of thick rough. He can't putt for shit right now, but I think Bay Hill is one of the golf courses on the PGA Tour where you want to just load up on elite driving and hope that they figure it out on the greens. So in this range, I'll tell you my favorites right now: Taylor Pendrith, Davis Thompson, who, we were on so heavily at Torrey Pines. And for a lot of the reasons that we liked him at Torrey Pines, I think you want DT this week too. I hated him at Cognizant last week. Like, DT is a driver short game guy, and Cognizant was like an approach and putting golf course. This is more of a driver short game course. Like, DT short game is absolutely elite. He's been great chipping on golf courses with thick rough. He is long. He's somewhat straight, but he always gains off the tee on some of these longer golf courses. I think it's a phenomenal spot for DT. And then, I have an Adam Scott problem, but 7,500, he has a tremendous history on these types of longer golf courses. He's hitting his irons great at the moment. He's gained over 2.5 on approach in 4 straight starts. He's still very long off the tee, even into his early 40s. So I think my favorites in this range: DT, Pendrith, Adam Scott. The guy that I wanted to ask you about that I'm somewhat curious about is Fitzpatrick, because I thought, what has Fitzpatrick done to be higher? Like, Fitz hasn't done anything this year, and I want to be early on Fitz too. This is the spot to be early on Fitz. but the books are cognizant of that, right? Like he's 60-1 and 7,700 despite having terrible form.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I thought we'd be buying early, but it's like people know that it's coming. And I'm not afraid to make that click despite that. So no, I'm with you. I think this is a really good spot for. I would not be shocked if he came out with like a top 5, top 10. And I think at 7,700, he might get up to like 7% or something. So you may have some really, really good value there.
I'm just responding to chat. Carl, so over Pendrith, he's been nothing but nuking for us if you play him in the right spots. Dave, maybe we go double or nothing this week. Shout out, Dave. I try and engage with like 5% of your bullshit, but I will give you proper credit for beating me last week in a straight up Greiserman over Kitayama. Hat tip. You were right on that. Get in touch with me for how you want your $50. I will 100% pay you for that. I'm a man of my word, unless you want to go double or nothing this week on maybe Fitzpatrick Sepp. I don't like Sepp this week at all. Hated him at Torrey too. I'll take the L last week. He finished T11. Like he wasn't a better play than Henley, but yeah, maybe we concoct a Fitz versus Sepp week because Sepp's a big fade for me. I'd do Fitz versus Tom Kim. 100% would do Fitz versus Tom Kim. I don't like Tom Kim at all this week, although 8th at LACC, as you mentioned. Who do you think's chalk in this range? Like, who do you think's the most popular guy in the sevens? Who do you think people gravitate to?
Yeah, no, it's a good question because like no one wants to click the Michael Kim might be the hottest, but it's like 7,600. No one's going to pay that for Michael Kim. Again, I think it's going to get pretty spread out here. I don't, given that it's going to be driver heavy, I think maybe at 7,100 you'll get some Grazerman clicks. Aaron Rye, like on paper, could make sense.
Bookmaker nuke potential.
Yeah, I'm not really,
yeah.
Yeah, but as far as that, again, like the AKs, I think it's going to get pretty spread because there's some pretty awkward pricing towards the top, and towards the bottom, it's like how much win equity does some of these folks really have?
Yeah, I like Rye this week too. I always like Rye. I've been, I play Rye pretty much every single week. He is a very accurate driver of the ball with great long irons. You saw how well he performed at Vedanta Vallarta on a golf course that allowed him to hit a ton of long irons. Kyle coming in here with the double love Sepp this week with 2 different YouTube accounts, just absolutely flooding the zone. Yeah. You guys tell me in the chat who you think will be the most popular, who's going to get the most ownership in the 7K range. Cause I'm not sure I can figure out if there's a clear chalk option there that everybody's going to gravitate to. And I think that's a good thing. I like that. I don't think that Fitz will be the most popular, Dave, only because of the price. He'll get steam from the sharp bettors for sure. But yeah, I think ownership gets pretty spread out around here. I don't mind Denny at the bottom either. Like, played Denny at Torrey Pines.
He always happens to be there.
He just cracks the code. Yeah, he just cracks the code on long and difficult golf courses. Like Denny's finished top 5. Denny has 2 top 5s at Muirfield Village, which is like my favorite comp this week in terms of
almost one
skill set. Yeah, almost won Muirfield Village too. Okay, let's talk about the 6s. Let's finish up in the 6s. I'm struggling down here, and there is 100% going to be a slate breaker for us. Who's that guy in the 6s? Who's the Brendan Todd of this year?
I think I might love, and he's always kind of popular down here, but I love Cam Davis, and I think that he has some really, really solid upside here. He's really good on challenging courses where your winners, like, was it like Oak Hill? Was he where he went like he was on the top of that leaderboard? But and even I think at
He
LACC
was.
he stayed
Shout out
relatively
Straka too,
relevant.
by the way, at Oak Hill. In
Yeah,
fairness,
that's a good point. It's a good point. Yeah, so I think Cam Davis is somebody that I'll be clicking on. Bez has been like quietly really good all year and kind of has a relevant history here too. So I don't mind Bez at 6,500. Harmon had a good run last year. He takes a kind of a different approach to it, but I mean, he's accurate, not necessarily going long, obviously. I know Harris English is obviously going to be really, really popular given history and pretty good
gosh, that's
season.
such a bummer. Is HE, is His Excellency RHE going to be the most popular 6K option? That's really
I think he'll
frustrating.
be. Hot take might be that Harris English may be popular than have more ownership than any 7K option. He's honestly being touted up, whether it's just Inside Sports or more broadly. He's pretty popular given his price and such. If you're just going to take like a bet on talent, betting on a 6,800 here is pretty crazy.
It is, but he has been ass, man.
Yeah,
and I have
really.
In true Dave fashion, I have been letting you guys have that one for a while, and
this may be the time.
Yeah,
and
maybe. I mean, it's a great
click.
Yeah, it's a great buy low. Golf tips checker. We love our golf tips checker coming in with the Twitter knowledge. English outright most popular bet right now. I'm going to go out on a limb and say I think you're asking for a little bit more than you're going to, than HE is ready for to win Torrey Pines and Bay Hill in a 5-week stretch. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that might be a little too much HE. You might be overdosing on HE.
He may be one that misses. He probably will be one that misses the cut. It's just how this goes.
Well, that's what I was saying is like my problem with the 6K range is that there are going to be 15 guys that misses the cut this week, and we can collect data on this at the end of the week. I will gladly hand up if I'm wrong in like the 6K range nukes. It's not like I'm going out on a limb here and saying the worst players in the field are going to play the worst, but in a tournament where 15 players miss the cut, the 70% of those guys that miss a cut are going to be the worst players in the field. So that's why I don't think you want to have more than 2 or 3 guys in this range. I think you want to finish a lot of your lineups with a player like Davis Thompson or Denny McCarthy, who in my opinion are so much more likely to make the cut this week than a player, in the mid to low sixes. I will say for me, I played Brian Harmon last week and he is hitting his irons unbelievably well right now. He cannot fucking make a putt to save his life. Maybe that's fine at Bay Hill.
Yeah.
That's generally more fine at Bay Hill if you could, completely nuke off the tee. But Harmon's putter completely broken at the moment. Harmon's irons, some of the best approach play I've seen out of him recently. I kind of agree with you, Kyle, on Bez. I would go back to Bez here. He's played good at Bay Hill. He's just a type of like, there's going to be one player in the top 10 this year. It happens every year at Bay Hill. It's like either Bez or Lucas Herbert or Brendan Todd. There's going to be one guy in the top 10 at Bay Hill that's like sucks at driving. It happens every single year. It's just like elite drivers. And there's one player that just like absolutely sucks at driving and has the most dirty short game in the world. I would say Bez is like, maybe the best candidate for that. I think a lot of people think it's Harris English. It might actually be Bez. And the only other guy I would mention is Jaeger. He
fits well. He definitely fits well.
He's gonna swing as hard as he can.
And I don't hate that. The one other person I'll add, and I don't know if he's necessarily a course fit, but he's actually starting to kind of show up at big boy courses. Nick Dunlap is starting to get a little interesting. I didn't think he was built for this sort of golf, but Genesis, he was pretty relevant. And the more that you see, the more he's kind of sticking around the top of the leaderboard, at least on like a Saturday.
Yeah. That's interesting to me, the Dunlap thing. I want to do a deeper dive on Dunlap. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else I wanted to mention down here. Pata Gigi, I get it. I really do. Like, I genuinely understand it. My off the tee numbers on Pata Gigi are phenomenal as well. I think he has a lot of things to clean up before I seriously consider him. I think that the short game on this golf course with a low greens and regulation percentage, like the thing that you have to understand with playing Pata Gigi this week is that, you know, he took himself out of the tournament at Mexico because of the short game. The field is just going to be missing more greens this week. Like, this is one of the lowest greens and regulation percentages on the PGA Tour. So just in terms of pure volume, Pata Gigi is going to have to rely on a short game a lot. Even if you want to say that he's going to hit more greens in regulation than the field because of his driver, he's still going to hit like a very good approach week. And Pata Gigi is not a good approach player. Is Pata Gigi hitting 64% of his greens? Pata Gigi is going to have to chip his ass off here. Like, he's just going to have to chip a ton. Maybe you get the Hovland theory where he just uses one motion and it's fine for him. But Pata Gigi is a no for me based off
I
the
think
short game.
drink every time you say Pata Gigi. Sheesh, that was a long run of Pata Gigis.
Like, honestly, it's just the Discord bits have become so normalized to me at this point. Like,
I don't even know what his real name is anymore.
I wouldn't even attempt to know how to pronounce his real name. The fact that there are people that are probably watching this for the first time and watching us talk about Pata Gigi with a straight face, like potentially generally thinking we're idiots.
We just dissuaded so many future
people.
subscribers.
Yeah, it's like these guys literally aren't even attempting to pronounce his name right. Like, fuck you guys. I'm from South Africa.
They think we're talking about the DP World Tour and some random.
Yeah, Kyle, Geider, pork eater. Like, come on, guys, pronounce the name right. Pot Geider. Okay, that's it for me. I don't have anything else, to be honest with you. Anyone else you want to mention before I let you get back to your jet set in life in London? How is London right now? How's the weather?
Lovely. Today was like 50 and sunny, so it's been really nice. Supposed to be really nice this week, so lucked out that way.
We started with tennis. We have to finish with tennis. Don't give away too much gold. We want people to join the Discord for your tennis magic, but Indian Wells this week via BK, do you have an Indian Wells lean or something to keep an eye out this week at Indian Wells? Give them like a teaser.
So after 25 years, they changed the surface of the ground. So usually Indian Wells plays really bouncy, higher bounces. It plays a lot like, frankly, like the clay courts a little bit. So a little bit slower, higher bounces. They changed it to the surfaces that you'd get, or the company that produces the surfaces that you get at the US Open or Miami Open. So it's going to be a little bit more lower bounces, playing a little bit faster. So Iga and Carlos have traditionally won like the last few years. They may have different winners this year as it plays a little differently. The type of person I'd like to look at on the male side, this is pre-futures coming out, pre-bracket coming out, so don't know. I like Alex de Minaur a lot on the men's side. And on the women's side, we may go back to Madison Keys. She's been good to us. So futures, we're going to have a more expansive list of futures. They'll be released behind the paywall before we tweet it out so we can get the numbers we want. But
yeah,
that's kind of how I see it.
Is there anything more ISN than Rishi breaking down a surface change of a tennis court? I mean, that's literally why you're here. I always said, like, because we're going to expand to other sports. I mean, I called it Inside Sports Network and not Inside Golf Network because the plan is to launch with Inside Golf. And then once, Inside Golf is successful and we don't have to worry about that as much and fully functional, then we launch Inside Tennis, Inside Football, Inside Basketball, etc. And I always said, I'm not going into any other sport unless we can have it be with the level of insight that we cover golf, right? Like I'm not launching a tennis product or a football product until we ensure that we could, cover that sport in the same way that we cover golf, which our brand is the highest level of analysis on golf courses, right? Like that's our bread and butter. Is you come to us, we are going to give you the most in-depth analysis on the golf courses. And to see you find, it's like watching, like it just makes my heart so full that you're touting like the surface of the tennis courts. Like it's just like it just brings so much immense joy to me to see you breaking down, like there's
The
a
tennis
surface,
architect.
there's this, the agronomy of a tennis court. So hop in the Discord. This is a phenomenal week to do it. As always, InsideSportsNetwork.com. Try it out for a week. I always say try it out for a week. I'd be shocked if you don't see value in it. We have best ownership. We have best golf course conditions. You don't need to be confused about how a golf course is going to play anymore. You don't need to look at the leaderboard and say, why is this 19 under par? You don't need to live that way anymore. You don't need to look at the ownership every Thursday morning and say, how is this guy 10 percentage points off the projections I was using? There's a different way of life out there. So anyway, Rishi, thanks for joining me as always, my friend. And I'll see you on Wednesday night.
Thanks for having me. Look forward to it. Big week.